The screen of her phone lit up, and Haley's heart leapt. Finally. But the words cut sharper than glass. "Wow, you actually went. I was just messing with you. Not worth the Uber." Another message followed instantly. "Seriously, you thought I was coming?" Her smile cracked. Around her, glasses clinked, laughter rose, candles flickered. The whole restaurant alive while she withered in silence. She straightened her spine, refusing to let the tears fall. She had been stood up before, but never like this. Hours earlier, she had stood in front of the mirror in her tiny apartment, curling strands of blonde hair with an old iron that barely worked. The dress she wore was vintage, pearl-colored, the fabric already showing its age. It had belonged to her mother. She had worn it only once before, on graduation day, when her mother's proud eyes had shone brighter than the sun. Tonight, the same dress was armor against the emptiness pressing in on her life. Her purse was nearly weightless. Inside, a phone with a cracked screen, a lip gloss almost empty, and one folded $5 bill, her emergency fund. She hadn't planned on paying for dinner. She had hoped her date would, that he would be the kind of man who wanted to share a meal, not just a night. As she locked the door to her small apartment, she told herself she wasn't desperate, just hopeful. It was a fragile hope, but it was all she had. The restaurant was beautiful in a way that felt just out of reach. Warm candlelight flickered across polished wood and soft navy linens. The air was filled with the hum of conversations, with the delicate music of glasses clinking together, with the faint aroma of garlic and rosemary drifting from the kitchen. Couples leaned close at tables, laughter spilling like champagne bubbles. Haley walked in, nerves dancing through her chest. The hostess greeted her with a polite smile. "Reservation? Haley?" she answered, trying to sound confident. "Right this way." She followed, her steps careful, her hands smoothing her dress again and again. The hostess led her to a small table by the window. The light above glowed softly, almost waiting for something to unfold. Haley sat with deliberate poise, placing her purse in her lap. She checked the time. 6:45. She was 15 minutes early. That was good. She needed a moment to breathe, to rehearse her smile, to remind herself that maybe tonight would be different. The minutes dragged. 7:00. Still early. He could be parking. 7:05. She sipped her water, scanning the door each time it opened. 7:10. She checked her phone again. Nothing. 7:15. She typed a quick message. "Hey, I'm here. Just checking in." She smiled at the screen as though sending the message could summon kindness from the other end. But no reply came. By 7:30, dread had wrapped around her ribs. She dialed his number, breath shallow. One ring, then voicemail. When the buzz finally came, relief surged, until she read the words that gutted her. "Just messing with you. Not worth the Uber." Her fingers tightened around the phone until her knuckles whitened. Her throat burned. She swallowed hard, forcing herself not to break, not here in front of strangers. She folded the napkin in her lap again and again, her spine straight as though posture alone could keep her from collapsing. Across the restaurant, Ethan Moretti watched. He sat in a corner booth, untouched scotch before him, his suit charcoal gray, his presence impossible to ignore. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes were not. They were sharp, restless, carrying the weight of a man who had lived too long in the shadows. He had noticed her the moment she walked in. The hope in her eyes, the nervous way she smoothed her dress, the determination to smile even when her hands trembled. And now, he noticed the way that hope drained from her face, leaving only silence and shame. He knew that look. Once long ago, he had worn it himself. Haley rose quietly, ready to vanish before anyone could see the truth. She slipped her purse over her shoulder, reaching for her coat. But just as she moved, a server appeared beside her with a steaming plate of pasta and a sparkling drink. "Your order, miss." Haley blinked, startled. I didn't order this. It was taken care of," the server replied. Her brows furrowed. Was this another trick? Another cruel joke to finish the humiliation? Then a voice came from just behind her, calm, low, unshakable. "It's not charity," Ethan said. Haley turned, startled. Ethan stood a few steps away, one hand resting lightly on the back of his chair. His eyes met hers, clear and unflinching. "It's a reminder," he said softly. "You deserve to eat, even when the world tries to tell you otherwise." The restaurant seemed to fade. The laughter, the clinking, the glow of the candles, all of it slipped to the edges of her vision as she stared at him. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not with pity, not with judgment, just truth. And for the first time that night, Haley breathed. Her trembling hand reached for the fork, and across the room, Ethan Moretti, the man who had seen her when no one else had, allowed himself the faintest flicker of a smile. The memory of that night at the restaurant lingered with Haley long after she returned to her small apartment. She replayed the moment in her mind, the warmth of the meal she hadn't ordered, the voice that had cut through her humiliation like a quiet rescue. "You deserve to eat, even if the world tells you otherwise." She hadn't even thanked him properly. She had fled before she could. Days later, she found herself walking into a small cafe near campus, the kind of place she visited only when her budget stretched enough for a plain coffee and free Wi-Fi. She ordered quickly, counting coins from her worn purse, and slipped into a corner seat with her notes. The barista approached moments later with 2 cups. He said, "This one's for you." Haley looked up and froze. Across the room, at a corner table, sat the same man. The suit was gone, replaced by rolled sleeves and a loosened collar. His laptop was open, but his eyes were on her. "You remembered my name," she said cautiously as she approached. "I remembered your courage," Ethan replied simply. The name was the easy part. She wasn't sure how to answer, but something inside her softened. She sat. They spoke in fragments at first, about her nursing studies, about the late nights at the library, about the impossible balance of work and school. Ethan listened without interrupting, his attention steady in a way that unsettled her. Most men had looked at her as though waiting for a moment to impress themselves on her life. He looked as though he simply wanted to see her. When she asked about his work, he offered only the edges of truth. "Food distribution," he said lightly. "Sometimes product research." Then, with a crooked smile, "Other times trying to fix campaigns that make toddlers look like they're chewing bubblegum." Haley laughed in spite of herself, covering her mouth. "That's terrible." "Tell me about it," he said. "I need someone with your honesty to keep my team from embarrassing us again." "I'm a broke nursing student, not a branding expert," she replied. "Exactly," Ethan said. "That's why you'd be better at it than half the people I pay." The lightness of the moment surprised her. For the first time in years, she found herself laughing with someone, not because she had to, but because it felt natural. When she left the cafe that morning, she expected him to stop her, to ask for her number, to try to extend the moment. But he didn't. He just smiled, nodded, and let her go. As she stepped out into the sunlit street, coffee warm in her hands, Haley realized she was smiling too. Not because she had been rescued, but because someone had listened, remembered, and laughed with her. And for the first time in a long time, she wondered if maybe her story wasn't finished. Maybe it was just beginning. A week passed, but the memory of Ethan in that cafe stayed with Haley. She told herself it was nothing, just a stranger with kind eyes who happened to notice her. Yet when her phone buzzed one afternoon with a message from an unfamiliar number, her breath caught. "There's a seminar tomorrow. Childhood nutrition. Thought it might interest you. No pressure." She read it twice, 3 times. Somehow he had found a way to reach her. The next day, she walked into a small community hall tucked between office buildings. Bright slides projected onto a screen, cartoon vegetables, smiling toddlers. The air smelled faintly of granola and fruit cups. She felt out of place among the young mothers, pediatricians, and polished students. Still, she found a seat in the 3rd row, clutching a notepad. When the presenter began discussing preservatives in toddler snacks, Haley raised her hand. Her voice trembled at first, but steadied as she pressed for details. Later, she pointed out a flaw in the allergy labeling system. Each time the speaker paused, impressed. "That's a very good question," he said. At the back of the room, Ethan watched in silence. He had seen sharp interns and ambitious consultants, but Haley wasn't trying to impress. She just cared, and in that, she was extraordinary. After the workshop, while the others networked and passed out resumes, Haley slipped quietly toward the door. She nearly bumped into him as he stepped out of the shadows. "You didn't tell me you'd be here," she said, startled. "I wanted to see if you'd come," Ethan replied, his tone calm but his eyes brighter than usual. "You paid for me, didn't you?" He gave a faint smile. "Thought it might align with your studies." Haley shook her head, torn between gratitude and confusion. "Why me? You don't even know me." Ethan leaned slightly closer, his voice low. "Because you remind me of something I thought I lost." Her heart stumbled at the words, but before she could ask what he meant, he stepped back, offering only a nod before disappearing into the crowd. That night, Haley lay awake, staring at the ceiling of her tiny apartment. She didn't know who Ethan really was or why he kept appearing at the edges of her life, but she knew this. For the first time in years, she felt seen, and it terrified her as much as it thrilled her. The next time Haley saw Ethan, it wasn't planned. She was leaving the library late, her backpack heavy with textbooks, when headlights swept across the sidewalk. A sleek black car slowed beside her. The window lowered, and there he was. "Ethan, you shouldn't be walking alone this late," he said. His voice was steady, but his eyes searched hers as if weighing whether she would trust him. Haley hesitated. Every part of her screamed to be cautious. Yet the memory of his quiet kindness pulled against her fear. She opened the door and slid inside. The ride was silent at first, the city lights flashing across his face, revealing edges of someone she couldn't quite understand. He drove with a calm focus, as though he was used to being in control. Always. Finally, she spoke. "You always appear when I least expect it." He smirked faintly. "Maybe I just have good timing." But when she glanced at him, she saw something harder in his jaw, something that didn't match his teasing tone. They stopped outside her apartment building. She gathered her things, ready to thank him quickly and escape the strange tension. But before she could, voices echoed from the alley, harsh, laughing, followed by the metallic clang of something kicked. Ethan's posture changed instantly. His hand shifted subtly toward his jacket. Haley froze. "What is it?" "Stay here," he ordered. His voice was firm now, no hint of the man who had bought her dinner. Through the window she saw two men step from the shadows, their movements too purposeful to be random. Ethan got out slowly, his shoulders straight, his presence radiating command. The men stiffened when they saw him. One muttered a curse. The other backed away. In seconds they vanished into the night. Ethan returned to the car, calm as if nothing had happened, but Haley's heart thundered. "Who are you?" she whispered. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, quietly, he said, "Someone you shouldn't get too close to." But it was too late. Haley knew now there was more to him than charm or kindness. His world was darker, sharper, dangerous, and yet, sitting there in the glow of the streetlights, she also knew she wasn't ready to walk away. The knock came just past midnight. Haley startled awake, the sound echoing too loud in the silence of her tiny apartment. She wrapped her cardigan tight and opened the door, only to find Ethan, standing there, his shirt torn, blood on his knuckles, his eyes burning with something between fury and exhaustion. "You're hurt," she whispered. "I didn't know where else to go," he said simply. She pulled him inside, guided him to sit at her small kitchen table, and searched for a clean towel. Her hands shook as she pressed it to his arm, wiping away blood. "You need a hospital," she said. "No doctors," he snapped, then softened. "Please, Haley, just this." She studied him, her fear mingling with something else, the realization that beneath the calm exterior, he carried scars she might never fully understand. As she cleaned the wound, silence filled the room, heavy but intimate. Finally, she dared to ask, "What are you running from?" His jaw clenched. Not running, fighting. Before she could press him further, a sound outside made them both freeze, the crunch of footsteps, too many, too close. Ethan's eyes sharpened instantly. He rose, pulling her behind him, just as the front door rattled under the force of a boot. The door burst open. Men poured in, faces hard, movements sharp. Haley gasped, clutching the back of Ethan's shirt. In an instant, the calm man who had once bought her dinner was gone. What remained was someone else entirely. Precise, lethal. He moved with terrifying efficiency, striking one man down with a knife hidden in his jacket, disarming another before the gun could rise. The apartment shook with chaos, shouts, crashes, the slam of bodies against furniture. Haley pressed herself against the wall, heart pounding, barely able to process what she was seeing. When the last intruder hit the floor, Ethan stood in the wreckage, chest heaving, eyes still sharp. Blood dripped from his hand, but he didn't falter. He turned to her slowly. "This is what I am," he said hoarsely, "and this is why you should stay away." Haley's breath trembled, but her eyes didn't leave his. Fear tangled with something deeper, stronger, because no matter how dangerous he was, she couldn't deny it anymore. He had become the one person she trusted to show up. The apartment was wrecked, chairs overturned, shattered glass on the floor, blood streaking the walls. Haley stood frozen in the corner, her pulse roaring in her ears. Ethan checked the bodies quickly, his movements swift, practiced. One groaned, still alive. Ethan pressed a boot to the man's chest, gun steady in his hand. "Who sent you?" The man spat blood and muttered a name that made Ethan's expression harden. "Romano." Ethan's jaw clenched. He pulled the man up by the collar, then slammed him back down with a warning growl. "Tell him if he comes near her again, he won't walk away." The intruder whimpered before Ethan knocked him unconscious. Haley's voice broke through the silence. "Ethan, who are you?" He looked at her, and for the first time she saw the full weight of the truth in his eyes. "I run things most people don't want to see," he admitted. "I'm not just some man in a suit, Haley. I've built an empire in the shadows. That's why they came, and that's why it's not safe for you to be near me." Her hands trembled, but she lifted her chin. "Then why did you come here?" His gaze softened, just slightly. "Because even with all of this, you're the only place I wanted to be." They packed quickly. Ethan insisted she couldn't stay in the apartment another night. Outside, a black SUV waited, headlights cutting through the darkness. Two men stood by the doors, sharp-eyed, loyal to him. Haley hesitated at the curb. "If I get in that car, everything changes, doesn't it?" "Yes," Ethan said honestly. "Once you step into my world, there's no going back." She swallowed hard, glancing from the ruined apartment to the man before her. He was dangerous, yes, but he had also been the one to see her when no one else had. Her decision came with a steady breath. She climbed into the car. As the SUV pulled away, the city lights blurring past, Ethan sat beside her, silent but watchful. Haley's fear remained, but beneath it something else stirred. The knowledge that whatever waited ahead, her life had already been changed forever. The safe house was hidden deep in the woods, a place Ethan's men had secured long ago. To Haley it felt less like safety and more like exile, a cabin surrounded by silence too heavy to breathe. She sat at the kitchen table, fingers wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. Ethan paced near the window, his phone buzzing constantly with updates from his men. Each time he answered, his voice was sharp, decisive, carrying the weight of someone used to command. Finally, she couldn't hold back. "You should have left me behind." Ethan turned, eyes narrowing. "Don't say that." "It's true," she pressed. "This isn't my fight. I'm just me, a student, a nobody. Why risk your life, and hers?" Her gaze flicked toward the small bedroom where Lily slept, oblivious. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Because Romano will use anyone he thinks matters to me. And whether you like it or not, you matter now." The words struck deeper than she expected. She wanted to argue, to push him away before his world swallowed hers. But instead she whispered, "You don't get to decide that." Ethan stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "Then decide for yourself. Do you want me to walk you out of here and disappear? Because if that's what you want, I'll do it. But if you stay..." His voice dropped lower. "You'll never be able to unsee who I really am." Haley's chest tightened. She thought of the restaurant, the cafe, the way he had remembered her courage. She thought of Lily's small smile when Ethan tucked her in, the tenderness he tried so hard to hide. And she realized she couldn't walk away. "I'm not leaving," she said firmly. For the first time that night, something flickered in Ethan's eyes. Not relief, not triumph, but vulnerability. Later, when the house had quieted, Haley stood on the porch, staring at the dark trees. Ethan joined her silently, his presence heavy but steady. "You're risking everything," she whispered. He didn't look at her, only at the shadows. "So are you." The night stretched between them, filled with unspoken fear and an unspoken bond neither of them could deny anymore. Days at the cabin settled into a strange rhythm. Haley cooked simple meals with whatever supplies Ethan's men brought, while Lily filled the rooms with crayons and quiet laughter. The violence of the city felt far away, but never gone. Haley often found Ethan on the porch late at night, his shoulders rigid, phone in hand, issuing orders she couldn't fully understand. He looked untouchable in those moments, the boss everyone feared. But then he would come inside, kneel beside Lily's bed, and brush her hair back with a gentleness that broke her heart. One evening, after Lily had fallen asleep, Haley lingered by the doorway, watching him tuck the blanket carefully around his daughter. "She trusts you completely," Haley said softly. Ethan looked up, his face shadowed but open. "She's all I have left worth protecting." The words hung in the air, heavy with sorrow. Haley stepped inside, her voice steady. "You have more than you think." Later, they sat by the fire. Haley curled her knees to her chest while Ethan leaned back, staring into the flames. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked suddenly. He glanced at her. "Regret what?" "This life, the power, the fear it brings." Ethan was quiet for a long time before he answered. "Every day. But regret doesn't change the past. It only sharpens the edges of what you've lost." Haley studied him in the firelight, the hard lines of his jaw, the haunted look in his eyes, and yet beneath it all she saw something fragile. "You're not the man they whisper about," she said. He gave a bitter laugh. "Then who am I?" Her answer came without hesitation. "The man who couldn't stand to see a stranger cry in a restaurant. That's who I see." Ethan turned, their eyes meeting. The tension between them shifted. Less fear, more gravity, like something pulling them closer. For a moment he leaned in, as though the distance between them was unbearable. But then he pulled back sharply, jaw tightening. "It's not safe," he muttered. Haley's voice trembled, but her resolve didn't. "Maybe it never will be. But I'm not afraid of you, Ethan." The fire crackled, filling the silence that followed. And for the first time, Ethan wondered if maybe, just maybe, love could exist, even in the shadows. The cabin had grown quieter with each passing night, but the silence wasn't empty anymore. It carried the weight of things unspoken. Haley found herself watching Ethan more than she meant to. The way he studied maps at the table, the way his shoulders stiffened when his phone buzzed, the way his expression softened whenever Lily clung to his hand. He was two men at once, the fighter who lived in shadows and the father who carried light in his pocket. One evening, after Lily drifted to sleep, Haley stepped outside for air. The stars hung low and clear. She wrapped her arms around herself, lost in thought. Ethan appeared behind her, quiet as always. "Can't sleep?" She shook her head. "Too many thoughts." He leaned on the railing, close but not touching. "I know the feeling." The words tumbled from her before she could stop them. "Why do you keep me here, Ethan? You could have sent me away." His jaw tightened. "Because I couldn't stand the thought of Romano finding you unprotected." "That's not the only reason," she pressed. He met her eyes, and for a heartbeat, he didn't look like the untouchable boss. He looked like a man stripped of his defenses. "No," he admitted softly. "It's not." The air between them shifted. Haley's heart pounded as he stepped closer, his gaze locked on hers. Every instinct told her to back away, to protect herself. But she didn't. She stayed. When his hand brushed her cheek, it was both hesitant and inevitable. She leaned into the touch, and before either of them could take a breath, his lips met hers. The kiss was not gentle. It was raw, desperate, filled with the weight of everything they had fought against. Haley's knees nearly buckled, but his arm circled her waist, holding her steady. When they finally pulled apart, their foreheads pressed together, breaths uneven. "This can't happen," Ethan whispered, though his hand refused to let her go. "Then why does it feel like it already has?" she whispered back. For the first time, neither of them pretended. Whatever lay ahead, danger, blood, shadows, something irreversible had begun between them. The kiss haunted them both. For days afterward, they moved around each other carefully, as if afraid that acknowledging it would make it too real. But reality had its own way of crashing in. One evening, Ethan left with 2 of his men to handle business at the edge of town. Haley tried to busy herself with Lily's bedtime, but the hours stretched heavy. When the door finally opened, her breath caught. Ethan stumbled in, bloodied, bruised, his shirt torn open. His men looked no better. Haley rushed forward. "Ethan!" "I'm fine," he growled, though his steps faltered. He sank into a chair, wincing as blood streaked down his arm. Haley grabbed a cloth, her hands trembling as she pressed it against the wound. "This isn't fine. You'll bleed out if you keep pretending you're made of stone." His eyes snapped to hers, fierce and vulnerable all at once. "This is who I am, Haley. The man who fights, the man who bleeds so the people he cares about don't have to." Her chest tightened. "And what happens when you don't come back? What do I tell Lily? That her father chose war over living?" Ethan's jaw locked, but his silence spoke volumes. Haley leaned closer, her voice breaking. "I don't care about the empire, or the power, or the fear you carry. I care about you. The man who remembers the details. The man who buys a stranger dinner because he can't watch her go hungry. That's the man I need to come home." The fire in his eyes flickered. For a moment she thought she'd reached him. And then, the sound shattered the night. Glass breaking. Boots pounding. Shouts in the dark. The cabin door burst open, armed men flooding inside. Romano had found them. Ethan's hand closed around his weapon in an instant. He spun toward Haley, shouting, "Get Lily! Go!" The war had breached their refuge, and this time, Haley knew there was no escaping untouched. The cabin exploded in chaos. Men in black surged through the doorway, weapons flashing, boots pounding against the floor. Ethan moved first. He shoved Haley toward the back room. "Get Lily! Now!" Haley's body shook, but instinct took over. She grabbed Lily from her bed, clutching the child against her chest as gunfire erupted in the front room. Lily screamed, burying her face in Haley's shoulder. Through the haze of fear, Haley glimpsed Ethan. He was a storm in human form, precise, lethal. Every move was controlled, every strike final. She had seen him bruised and bloodied, but never like this. This was the man the city whispered about. And yet, even as bullets shattered wood and glass, his eyes kept flicking toward her, making sure she was still standing. Haley crouched low, hiding Lily behind a dresser. Her hands trembled as she tried to calm the little girl. "It's okay, sweetheart. Daddy's here. He won't let them hurt us." But Haley's own voice betrayed her terror, because she didn't know if Ethan could win this time. There were too many. One of Romano's men forced his way down the hall, spotting her. He smirked, lifting his weapon. Haley's blood turned to ice. Without thinking, she grabbed a lamp from the nightstand and swung with all her strength. The man staggered, cursing. Before he could recover, Ethan appeared, knife flashing. The intruder collapsed at Haley's feet. Ethan's chest heaved, his eyes blazing as he gripped Haley's arm. "Stay behind me." The fight raged for what felt like hours, but was only minutes. Finally, silence fell. The cabin was wrecked, littered with broken glass and blood. Ethan stood in the center of it all, chest heaving, shirt torn and soaked red. Haley pressed Lily close, her own body trembling. When Ethan finally looked at them, his expression shifted. The ruthless killer was gone. In his place stood a man barely holding himself together. He crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled them both into his arms. "I told you to run," he rasped. Haley buried her face against his chest, her voice breaking. "And leave you here to die? Never." For a moment, amid the wreckage, they clung to each other. But in Haley's heart, one truth echoed louder than the gunfire had. There was no going back. She was part of his world now. The cabin smelled of smoke and iron. Blood streaked the walls, broken glass glittered on the floor, and the night air pushed through the shattered windows. Haley sat on the couch with Lily in her arms, rocking the trembling child, whispering words she didn't fully believe. Ethan stood by the door, his phone pressed to his ear, voice low and sharp. Orders, threats, promises, a language Haley didn't understand but knew was soaked in violence. When he hung up, he leaned against the wall, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion. "You can't stay here," he said flatly. Haley looked up, defiant. "And where do you expect us to go? Back to my apartment so they can find me there next?" "You don't understand." "No," she cut in, her voice trembling but strong. "I understand perfectly. You've decided I don't belong in this fight. But Ethan, I'm already in it. They came for me, for Lily. That choice is gone." He crossed the room in 2 strides, his eyes blazing. "Do you think I want this for you? To live looking over your shoulder? To wake up wondering if today is the day it all ends?" Her breath hitched, but she didn't back down. "And do you think I want to watch you destroy yourself? To wait here in silence while you bleed for a world you hate? You can tell yourself you're protecting me, but all you're doing is shutting me out." For a moment his face cracked, anger fading into something rawer, heavier. He looked away, jaw tight. "I don't know how to be anything else, Haley." Her voice softened, but her eyes didn't waver. "Then let me show you. Let me stand with you, because I don't love you despite the danger. I love you inside it." Silence stretched. Outside, the forest whispered. Inside, Ethan's chest rose and fell, his fists trembling at his sides. Finally, he sank onto the couch beside her, burying his face in his hands. Haley reached out, sliding her fingers into his. For the first time, he didn't pull away. And in that fragile quiet, both of them knew. There was no more denying it. Whatever storm waited ahead, they would face it together. The cabin never truly slept. Even after the attack, Ethan's men patrolled the woods in shifts, radios crackling through the night. Haley tried to rest, but every sound made her tense. Ethan stood at the window, a shadow outlined by moonlight, phone pressed to his ear. When he finally spoke, his words were low and sharp. "Tell Romano if he wants me, he can find me at the docks. No more games." Haley sat up on the couch, clutching a blanket around her shoulders. "You're baiting him." "I'm ending this," Ethan said flatly. "As long as he breathes, you and Lily aren't safe." Her voice shook. "And if you don't come back?" He looked at her, his eyes dark, unreadable. "Then at least you'll know I didn't run." The following night, Ethan prepared to leave. His men loaded weapons into the SUV, their faces grim. Lily clung to Haley's hand, sensing something was wrong. "Daddy?" she asked softly. Ethan crouched down, smoothing her hair. "Be good for Haley. I'll be back." Haley's chest tightened. She wanted to beg him not to go, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she whispered, "You don't have to do this alone." Ethan's gaze lingered on her. "You're the only reason I wish that were true." The docks stretched wide and silent, fog rolling off the water. Romano was already there, flanked by trucks and armed men. His silver hair gleamed under the floodlights, his smile razor sharp. "So the king finally leaves his castle," Romano sneered. "And what do I see? A man so desperate to protect a woman that he risks his empire." Ethan's voice cut the air like a blade. "Leave them out of this. This is between you and me." Romano laughed, the sound echoing across the steel. "That's where you're wrong. They're already part of it. Because weakness, Moretti, is always punished." Haley's breath caught as she watched from the shadows where Ethan had told her to stay hidden. She should have listened. She should have stayed behind. But something in her refused to let him face this alone. As the first gunshot cracked through the night, She realized one truth with terrifying clarity. This fight wasn't just his anymore. It was theirs. Gunfire shattered the night. Muzzle flashes lit the fog as Ethan's men clashed with Romano's soldiers. Crates splintered, metal screamed, and the air filled with smoke and shouts. Haley pressed herself against a wall at the edge of the dock, shielding Lily behind her. She had disobeyed Ethan by coming, but every instinct told her she needed to be here. If this was the night he fell, she wouldn't forgive herself for hiding far away. Ethan moved through the chaos like he was born to it. Precise, brutal, unstoppable. Yet even as he fired and fought, his gaze kept flicking toward the place where he knew she might be. Protecting her was more than instinct now. It was his reason to keep breathing. Romano stepped forward through the haze, his voice cutting above the gunfire. "You think you can erase me, Moretti? You've forgotten what it costs to be king." Ethan raised his weapon, but Romano's men swarmed, driving him back. The fight was unrelenting, the odds brutal. Haley's heart pounded as she crouched low, whispering into Lily's ear, "Stay still, sweetheart. Daddy's going to win." She prayed the words weren't a lie. At last, Ethan's men gained ground. Romano retreated into the shadows, snarling orders. Ethan's jaw tightened, ready to pursue, but Haley stepped into his path, forcing him to stop. "You can't chase him like this," she begged, her voice raw. "Not with Lily here, not with everything at stake." Ethan's chest heaved, blood streaking his temple. "If I don't end him now, he'll keep coming." Haley shook her head, tears burning her eyes. "Then fight smarter, not like the man who has nothing to lose. Fight like the man who has everything to live for." Her words hit harder than any bullet. For a moment, Ethan froze, torn between rage and the truth staring him in the face. The night ended not in victory, but in survival. Romano slipped away, his empire wounded but not destroyed. Ethan gathered Haley and Lily, his arms strong around them as the smoke cleared. Haley pressed her face to his chest, whispering through trembling lips, "If we're going to survive this, we do it together. No more shutting me out." Ethan didn't answer, but his arms tightened, and for the first time, he allowed himself to believe her. The cabin felt like a cage. Romano might have slipped away at the docks, but Ethan knew it was only a matter of time before he struck back harder. Haley paced the small living room, clutching Lily's favorite blanket. "We can't just wait for him to come again." Ethan loaded a magazine into his weapon with steady hands. "That's exactly what we'll do. Let him come, and I'll end it." Haley's voice broke. "And if you don't, do you realize what that means for her? For me?" His eyes met hers, sharp, but aching. "That's why you should have walked away when you had the chance." The chance never came. That night, headlights cut through the trees. The crunch of tires over gravel sent Ethan's men scrambling to positions. Romano had found them. The first shot shattered a window. Glass rained across the floor. Lily screamed, and Haley pulled her close, shielding her body with her own. Ethan moved like lightning, barking orders, firing into the shadows. The cabin became a battlefield again, but this time Romano's men pushed harder, hungrier. Haley crouched in the corner, Lily trembling in her arms, until one intruder forced his way inside, weapon raised. Without thinking, Haley lunged. She swung a heavy iron pan from the fireplace, striking the man across the face. He collapsed, stunned. Haley stood over him, chest heaving, the pan shaking in her grip. Ethan saw it. His expression flickered, shock, pride, and something deeper. By dawn, the ground outside was littered with defeat. Romano's men had retreated once more. Inside, Ethan found Haley in the bedroom, rocking Lily back to sleep. Her hands still trembled, but her eyes were steady. "You saved her," he said quietly. Haley looked up, her voice raw. "We saved each other." For the first time, Ethan realized she wasn't a weakness in his world. She was the reason he could survive it. Morning light bled weakly through the broken cabin windows. The air smelled of gunpowder and pine. Ethan stood at the table, a map spread before him, marked with docks, warehouses, and routes, every place Romano still held power. Haley lingered in the doorway, arms crossed. How many more times do we wait for them to find us before you admit we can't live like this? Ethan's jaw tightened. I'm not waiting anymore. I'm taking this to him. Her chest tightened. That's not a plan, Ethan. That's suicide. He looked up at her, the weight of his world in his eyes. If I don't finish this, Romano will keep coming. For me, for you, for Lily. The only way to protect you is to burn him out completely. For hours, the cabin buzzed with preparations. Ethan's men checked weapons, fueled trucks, and packed supplies. It was the calm before a storm Haley had never imagined herself walking into. That night, after Lily had finally fallen asleep, Haley found Ethan outside, sharpening a blade in the glow of the porch light. You don't have to do this alone, she said softly. He gave a bitter laugh. This is all I know. Haley stepped closer, forcing him to meet her eyes. That's not true. I've seen the man who remembers how I like my coffee. The man who tucks his daughter in with a story. You are more than this war, Ethan. Don't let it take what's left of you. For the first time, his hand stilled. The knife lowered, and in his silence, she knew her words had reached him, even if he couldn't say it aloud. At dawn, they left the cabin. Haley sat in the SUV with Lily, her heart pounding as the convoy of black vehicles wound through the city streets. Ethan's men moved with grim focus, but Ethan himself was quiet, his gaze locked ahead. The plan was simple, brutal. Strike Romano's last stronghold at the South Warehouse and end it all. As they approached, Ethan turned back to Haley. His voice was low but steady. Stay in the car, no matter what you hear, no matter what happens. Haley nodded, though her hands trembled. The convoy pulled into the empty lot, the warehouse looming like a beast waiting in the dark. Floodlights snapped on, shadows shifted. Romano's men were ready. Ethan stepped out first, his coat snapping in the wind, his men fanning out behind him. Haley pressed her hands against the window, her breath catching as the air thickened with the promise of violence. The war that had chased them for so long was about to end, one way or another. The South Warehouse loomed like a fortress, floodlights slicing through the fog. Romano's men spread across the lot, weapons raised, their trucks blocking every exit. Ethan stood at the front, coat billowing in the wind, his gun steady at his side. He didn't flinch. Romano, his voice thundered across the steel and shadows. It ends tonight. Romano stepped forward, leaning heavily on a cane, his leg still bandaged from Ethan's last bullet. His smile was sharp, cruel. Ends? Oh, Moretti, this is only the beginning. You think love makes you strong? It makes you weak. And tonight I'll prove it. Gunfire erupted, echoing like thunder. Ethan's men surged forward, the lot exploding in chaos. Bullets sparked against crates, bodies fell, shouts tore through the night. Haley ducked low inside the SUV, clutching Lily against her chest. Her heart pounded with every crack of gunfire. She had promised Ethan she'd stay put. But when she glanced through the glass, her blood ran cold. Romano wasn't aiming at Ethan. He was circling toward the cars, toward them. Haley's instincts screamed. She slid the door open and ran, Lily still in her arms. Haley! One of Ethan's men shouted, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Romano appeared from the shadows, his gun raised. So this is the girl who makes the king stumble, he sneered. Haley's breath caught. She turned her body, shielding Lily. You won't touch her. His finger tightened on the trigger, and then Ethan's voice split the air. Romano! Romano spun just as Ethan's shot rang out, grazing his shoulder. Romano staggered but didn't fall. He aimed back, at Ethan. Without thinking, Haley hurled a broken bottle she had grabbed from the ground. It struck Romano's wrist, forcing his aim wide. The shot went wild. Ethan charged, tackling Romano to the ground. The two men fought brutally, fists and fury colliding, years of hatred boiling over. Blood streaked their faces, their grunts echoing in the night. Haley stood frozen, clutching Lily, her chest heaving. She had never seen Ethan like this, not just a fighter, but a man on the edge of losing everything. At last, Ethan pinned Romano, his gun pressed to the rival's chest. His finger hovered on the trigger, his face twisted with rage. One pull, and it would all be over. "Do it!" Romano spat, blood on his lips. "Show her who you really are." Haley's voice broke through the storm. "Ethan!" He froze. She stepped closer, trembling but steady. "If you kill him now, you'll never be free. Not from him. Not from this life. Don't let him decide who you are." For a moment, silence swallowed the battlefield. Ethan's chest rose and fell, his finger tight on the trigger. Then slowly, he lowered the gun. He leaned down, his voice a growl in Romano's ear. "You don't die by my hand. You live with the ruins of everything you've lost." He stood, signaling his men. "Take him. Strip everything he owns. Let him watch it burn." Romano howled, dragged away as his empire crumbled before his eyes. Haley's knees buckled with relief. Ethan crossed the lot, bloodied and shaking, and pulled her and Lily into his arms. For the first time, he whispered the truth aloud. "You're my strength, not my weakness." And in that moment, Haley knew the war was ending, but their story was only beginning. The warehouse still smoked hours after the battle. Ethan's men swept through what remained, tearing down Romano's banners, seizing weapons, and torching crates of contraband. The empire Romano had built for decades crumbled in a single night. Ethan stood apart from it all, blood drying on his face, his chest heaving with exhaustion. Romano's curses echoed as he was dragged into the back of a truck, powerless for the first time in years. Haley approached carefully, Lily asleep in her arms, her voice soft but firm. "It's over, Ethan." His eyes stayed on the flames consuming the warehouse. "For them, maybe. For me, I don't know if it ever ends." She shifted Lily against her shoulder. "It does, if you let it. You don't have to keep fighting ghosts." Later, at the cabin, silence fell heavy. Ethan washed the blood from his hands, staring at the sink as if the stains would never truly leave. Haley stepped behind him, wrapping her free arm around his waist. "You did the hardest thing tonight," she whispered. "You spared him." Ethan's voice cracked, low and raw. "I wanted to kill him. God, Haley, I wanted it more than anything." "And you didn't," she reminded. She touched his jaw, forcing him to meet her gaze. "That's the man I see. The one who chose us instead of vengeance." Something in him broke then. Not in weakness, but in release. He leaned into her touch, his forehead pressing against hers, the weight of years loosening from his shoulders. Days turned into weeks. Romano's men scattered or swore loyalty to new leaders, but none dared challenge Ethan again. His empire no longer demanded his every breath. For the first time, there was space for quiet. Haley noticed the changes. Ethan no longer answered every late-night call. He sat at the table with Lily, helping her draw stick figures and clumsy hearts. He laughed, awkward at first, then freely, as though rediscovering a part of himself. And every night, when the house grew still, Haley found herself in his arms by the fire. No words, just the safety of being seen, finally, for who they both were beneath the scars. But peace was fragile. One evening, Ethan returned from town, his knuckles raw. Haley's heart sank. What happened? He hesitated, then shook his head. Just old ties refusing to die. Her chest tightened. "You promised this was behind us." Ethan's silence was answer enough. The world he had tried to bury wasn't finished with him yet. Haley's grip on his hand tightened. "Then we fight it differently this time. Together. No more secrets." Ethan studied her, the firelight flickering in his eyes. Slowly, he nodded. Together. The war was over, but healing had only just begun. And as Ethan held Haley and Lily close, he knew the real battle wasn't against Romano, or guns, or blood. It was against the part of himself that still believed he didn't deserve this life. Romano was gone. His empire had collapsed, his men scattered, and the city no longer whispered Ethan's name in fear. But victory didn't bring peace overnight. The cabin grew quieter, no longer a battlefield but not yet a home. Haley spent mornings cooking simple breakfasts while Lily colored at the table. Ethan split wood outside, his muscles straining with every swing of the axe. The sound was steady, almost cleansing, nothing like gunfire. Haley watched him through the window one morning, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. When he caught her gaze, he gave her a small smile, not the smirk of a boss, but the unguarded warmth of a man learning how to live again. Lily adjusted the fastest. One afternoon she held up a drawing, a house with a yellow door and 3 stick figures holding hands. "That's us," she said proudly. "Daddy, Mommy, and me." Haley's breath caught. She crouched beside her, voice trembling. "That's beautiful, Lily," the child whispered with innocent certainty. "You can be Mommy if you want." Haley hugged her tightly, tears stinging her eyes. From across the room, Ethan froze, his chest tightening. For years he had believed his daughter would only grow up with ghosts. Now she was drawing futures. That night, Ethan found Haley by the fire. She looked up as he entered, her eyes reflecting the flames. "Lily asked me to be her mother today," Haley said softly. Ethan crouched in front of her, his hand brushing her cheek. "You already are," he murmured. Her breath caught. "And what about you, Ethan? What am I to you?" His eyes burned into hers. "Everything I thought I didn't deserve." Life shifted in small ways. Haley cooked, Ethan fixed broken shutters, Lily filled the house with laughter. They ate dinners together, argued about burnt bread, and ended nights sitting close, sometimes talking, sometimes silent. One rainy evening, Haley asked the question that lingered. "Do you ever miss it? The power, the fear?" Ethan stared at the fire. "It kept me alive, but it killed everything else. I don't want to be feared anymore. I just want to be seen." Her hand slid into his. "I see you." And in the quiet that followed, their lips met again. Not desperate this time, but certain, as though sealing the promise of a future neither had dared to believe in before. The war was over. What remained was fragile, ordinary, and for them, extraordinary. The war was over. The world no longer trembled at the mention of Ethan Moretti's name, and Romano's shadow had vanished like smoke in the wind. Yet what truly marked the end wasn't the silence of the streets or the fall of an empire. It was the laughter inside a small cabin nestled in the pines. Mornings came slowly now. Haley woke to the smell of coffee instead of gunpowder, to the sound of Lily's small feet running across the wooden floor instead of men shouting orders. Sometimes she would open her eyes to find Ethan already awake beside her, watching her with an expression she had never seen on his face before. Peace. One Saturday, the 3 of them sat on the porch eating breakfast. Lily's face was messy with jam as she waved a crayon drawing in the air. "See? It's us. Our house, our family, and Mommy cooking spaghetti." Haley laughed, pulling her close. Ethan studied the paper quietly, his throat tight. A crayon picture, simple, childish, yet it was everything he had fought for and never dared to dream he would hold. In town, things changed too. When Ethan walked through the streets, people no longer looked away in fear. They nodded politely, sometimes even gratefully, for the businesses he now kept afloat through legitimate work. Haley noticed the way he carried himself, not as a man hiding in shadows, but as a man who finally believed he could live in the light. She stood by his side in grocery stores, in cafes, in parks with Lily. Each moment ordinary, each moment extraordinary. One evening, after Lily had fallen asleep, Ethan led Haley into the kitchen. The table was set with candles and the good plates they rarely used. Haley raised a brow, suspicious. "What's all this?" she teased. Ethan didn't answer right away. He reached into his pocket, his hands trembling in a way they never had in battle. He pulled out a small velvet box, simple, unadorned. When he opened it, the candlelight caught on a delicate ring, a single stone that glowed softly. "I spent years thinking love was a weakness," he said quietly. "But you showed me it's the only strength worth holding. I don't want to save you, Haley. I don't want to own you or cage you. I just want to stay if you'll let me." Her eyes blurred with tears. "After everything we've survived, you're still asking?" "Yes," Ethan whispered. "Because you deserve to choose." Haley cupped his face, her voice trembling. Then my answer is yes, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and when he kissed her, it wasn't desperate or stolen. It was certain, sealing the life they had built together. The next morning, Lily spotted the ring and gasped. "Mommy, does that mean you're ours forever now?" Haley crouched down, pulling her into her arms. "If you'll have me." Lily hugged her tightly. "Forever and ever." Ethan knelt beside them, wrapping his arms around both. His chest ached with a fullness he had never known. He had lost so much in his life: friends, blood, innocence. But in that moment he realized he had gained more than he had ever dreamed possible. Not power, not fear. A family. Weeks later, they returned to the restaurant where it all began. The same warm lights glowed above polished tables. The same hum of conversation filled the air. But this time, Haley didn't sit alone with $5 in her purse. She walked in hand with Ethan, Lily skipping happily at her side. They sat at a corner table, 3 chairs, not one. When the server approached, Ethan smiled faintly. "Tonight we order everything she wants, for the girl who once waited 45 minutes and still believed someone would show up." Haley laughed softly, her eyes shimmering. "You remember everything." "I remember you," he said simply. Lily spread a new crayon drawing across the table. A little house with a yellow door, a sun above it, and 3 smiling stick figures holding hands. "This is us," she said proudly. Haley touched the drawing, her heart overflowing. She looked at Ethan, and he reached across the table, lacing his fingers through hers. For the first time, Haley spoke the words she had carried for so long. "We're home." Ethan squeezed her hand, his voice low and steady. "And I'm never late again." If you enjoy stories like this, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. That's how I'll know you truly liked it. Even if you're watching on your TV, grab a second to join this family of fans who love emotional and heartfelt stories. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you even more tales like this one.